You weren't doing business if you weren't wearing a suit.
Really?
Until the snowboarders came in with baggy pants and hookers in the boots and changed the whole vibe of the show. And then after that, nobody wore suits anymore. So.
Oh, what's up, guys? Welcome to All Aspects. This is a podcast where we explore, discuss, celebrate adventure culture and outdoor lifestyle. It's our mission to educate and inform and entertain our fellow adventurers about the inherent risks that surround us every time we go play in the backcountry, and to give you the tools and education to do the things that you love the most in the safest way possible. All Aspects is brought to you by AspectAvy. AspectAvy is on a mission to save lives by making avalanche safety simple. It is the only app that has built-in dynamic slope angle shading to show you exactly which areas are likely to trigger that day, allowing you to spend more time enjoying your backcountry adventure every time you go out. With a suite of built-in tools like forecast verification, a 3-axis slope meter tool, tour tracker, and more, AspectAvy is the new safety standard for avalanche risk management. Remember, there are dozens of apps that get you into the backcountry, but there's only one that's designed to bring you home, and that's AspectAvy. Go to AspectAvy.com to learn more, or download the app to start your 30-day free trial. Hey, thanks AspectAvy for sponsoring the podcast, and thank you all for tuning in. All right, let's get to it.
All right, I'm sitting down here with Mike Hattrup. He's a former ski movie legend and star, and AMGA certified ski guide, creator of the K2 Telemark line, and current snow brand director at Black Diamond. Mike, welcome.
Thank you.
And we've also got a guest who's off camera here, his partner in crime, Angela Hawes, Madam President from the AMGA, who's just wrapped up her term. She'll be on next week's podcast.
That's right.
But it'll be funny because we got a heckler in the audience
I was
here.
going to say, she's just here to heckle tonight.
5-star heckler.
So, Mike, you've had a life filled with adventure for decades. What does the term adventure mean to you? How do you think about adventure?
We always say it's not an adventure until something goes wrong.
Oh, tell me more about that.
I think to me, adventure is... It's got an element of unknown. You don't know what you're going to find.
Yeah. Kind of like this podcast. Like, what am I getting
exactly.
into? I've had a couple glasses of
sure
wine and dinner. I got lulled into a sense of complacency, and then Banks sprung this on me. Okay.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, to me, I think that's the key to it for me, is that there's a element of the unknown. You don't know what you're going to find. You don't.
That's
know.
where it gets interesting, right?
Yeah, that's what makes it interesting and captivating, is how what you're going to find and how you deal with it. And
is it implicit that there's an element of risk involved with adventure?
Well, I think the fact that there's unknown itself means there's an element of risk, because you don't know. But yeah, to me there's always an element of risk.
Okay. And how has your thinking of risk evolved over the years? Because, I mean, how many decades are we talking about high-risk activities in the mountains?
Well, I'm more risk-averse now than I was.
Okay. And why is that?
And I'm more aware of risk than I was.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Blissfully unaware for a long time.
Completely oblivious at times. Yeah. Probably one of the best examples of that was surfing in Hawaii.
Oh.
And I'm not a surfer.
Okay.
And so I'm out there.
Don't know what we don't know.
I'm out there and it's the beginner beach on the North Shore. It's Haleiwa, and I was just surfing that. Normally there's a little break, and I was surfing that, and then one day it was bigger, and further out all the real surfers were, and I'm in the beach break, and I got tumbled, and the leash got ripped off of my leg, and the board went all the way in to shore. So I go, okay, so I'm swimming in. Yeah. And there's a big rock jetty that protects a little marina behind there. And I finally get to shore, and I'm not exhausted, but I've already...
Pretty tired.
Yeah, I'm not a swimmer either, right? So, and my board's nowhere to be found. And then I see my board, it's going along the rock jetty. And I'm going,
That's expensive. I better get
So
it.
I scramble up in the rock jetty, I wait for the set to come through, scramble up on the rock jetty, and I'm cruising down the jetty, and my board is going further and then also further out to sea. And finally I get caught up to it, and I'm like, it's a ways out there now, and I'm thinking, how much is my deposit on this thing? Right? I go, and I think I can get it. So I dive in, I swim out, get the board, I paddle in, and I'm cooked by the time I get in there. And right when I get in, the lifeguards are getting there. It's early in the morning, putting signs in the stand, caution, dangerous riptide. So and this gave me a lot of empathy too, because the people that you see leaving the resort, ducking the ropes, skiing in high hazard, and have no clue.
Idea. Yeah.
So I'm a little more empathetic with them instead of going, you idiots, because that was me.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes being out of your element, your area of expertise to have some empathy.
'Cause your area of expertise deals with frozen water.
So,
not liquid. Yeah.
So,
what advice would you give your younger self about adventure and risk?
oh boy.
Take your time.
My younger self. I don't know. I think it takes some time to learn more about it, about where you are and what you're doing. I mean, because that was me in Hawaii, just going out, let's go surfing.
How hard could it be?
Yeah, and wow, and because it doesn't look dangerous, right? You can't see a riptide, just like a foot of fresh powder doesn't look dangerous at all. Unlike you spent
an old snow a week later.
You spent a lot of time in Chamonix. In Chamonix, you got big tumbling glaciers and seracs and crevasses.
It's a long list of things that could smoke you.
And it all looks scary.
Yeah.
It's intimidating. Whereas a field of 20 inches of new powder on a 30-degree slope doesn't look dangerous at all. It looks inviting.
Yeah.
So I think that's, and I guess when you talk about your younger me, I've got kids, and that's what I give them is don't assume, or it's safe.
Yeah. Did you have mentors along the way who could kind of rein you back in and say, hey, I think that was over the line today? Because it sounded like when you were surfing, and I've been in that same exact experience, like, oh, I'll learn how to surf. How hard could it be? And then be like, oh my God, I almost drowned out there. Yeah. Did you have mentors along the way that gave you guidance?
Yeah, but not till later. I mean, when we shot Blzzard of Aahhh in Chamonix, I was completely clueless. Yeah. I'd never been outside the resort boundary at all. I was a resort mogul skier. So when I got to Chamonix, I mean, I saw all this raw, fierceness out there, and I was drawn to the terrain, but knew I had no business being out there. And it wasn't really until later. I really had two mentors in the mountain, and one was John Faulkner, who's an IFMGA guide, Australian, living in Verbier.
Yep.
And he introduced me to rock climbing and my first alpine climb and my first ski mountaineering trip. And then after that, it was a Swiss guide that I worked for, Martin Volken, who owns a guide service in Seattle area. And he really, so those two were my main mentors for sure.
All right. We had talked about this before, but when I was a kid growing up in Vermont, it was an annual rite of passage to go to Burlington, the big city, to the Flynn Theater, this big old opera house, and watch a ski movie. And when I saw Blzzard of Aahhh, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do that, but that's what I'm going to do with my life.
And what did I say to you?
You said, Jeff, don't blame me for your bad life decisions. So 15 years of living in Chamonix and guiding, I was like, oh yeah, it was an incredible amount of adventure and so fulfilling, but also incredibly risky and a lot of close calls. And some of those were just the nature of being in the mountains. You're like, that's just an objective hazard, that rock fall or, what have you. That's just part of the game. And then other times were mistakes that I made that I didn't realize because when I was young and I had just gotten my guide's badge and I thought I knew it all. And one of my mentors going through the AMGA said, hey, this isn't the finish line when you get your guide's badge. It's just the start of the learning. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? And only in hindsight, when I'd have close scrapes, did I was like, oh, these are the outlier conditions that I hadn't been exposed to before. But now that I'm doing 300 days a year for fun and for work, I'm seeing all the weird shit that can go wrong. And whoa, that was really close and a really hard lesson. It was kind of wild to like interview you here and kind of bring it full circle. It's kind of nuts.
Well, and that was me too. And it was Chamonix that brought me down this path of becoming a guide and being more educated, because I was drawn to the terrain, and knew I had no business being there. So that's when I started down the guide path education. When I started, there was no ski guide program in the U.S.
When did you start the
So
AMGA
I started.
program?
I guided for RMI and Rainier.
Oh yeah,
because that was a great education and
awesome terrain. And
yeah, I mean amazing. You don't
huge
find
glaciers.
that terrain anywhere else
In the lower 48.
Yeah. I mean there's 26 glaciers on Rainier.
On
so
one mountain.
You
That's
learn
wild.
a lot. But I also got tired of walking down a perfectly good ski hill, and
I've yet to walk down that mountain. I only ski it. It's a
Good for
great ski
you.
hill. It is a great ski hill. Yeah.
So yeah, it was, and I was guiding there in '95 and '96, and the ski guide program didn't start. I got certified in '99.
Oh, so you must have been one of the first ski guides.
I think I was number 7. It was
Whoa.
the second year.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it was early on, and that was Bela Vidaz and Jean Pavillard.
Yeah, who was right here in Crested View.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now he's back in Switzerland.
So,
yeah.
And I actually took my exam in Switzerland in the Berner Oberland.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was cool.
Big glaciers.
Oh yeah, it
Big
was.
peaks.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Oh, that's pretty wild. And so when you were saying you were inspired by the terrain and I think maybe the beauty of the mountains in Chamonix, was that kind of like the motivation to be like, hey, I want to learn how to manage this terrain and manage my team through the terrain, and that led you down the guide's path?
Yeah, and I didn't think I didn't initially plan on being a guide. I just wanted to get more educated.
Oh, okay.
So I went and took a crevasse rescue course from the Mountaineers in Seattle, and I took a rock course and a first aid course, and those just kept building. And then when and I went and climbed Rainier with some friends and a former guide at RMI, and that again piqued my interest further, and so it just kept building, and so there it was. And I've always, unlike you, I've always been a part-time guide.
Okay.
I've always, and I always joked.
What was your other?
Because when I was working
job?
at RMI, I always joked that the only reason I can afford to be a guide is because I have another job. Because
to support your guiding habit.
They didn't pay real well back then.
Yeah.
I think it's changed now. But
Yeah.
no, I've always worked in the ski industry. When I came back from Chamonix from shooting Blzzard, I finally graduated from school. Unlike your brother, I beat your brother, but it was still 7 years. I
was on the 8-year plan. They were calling me doctor by the time I got out of there.
I was going to say,
or grandpa.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think you don't want to let don't let life get in the way of having a good education.
Well, I always say, I said the same thing throughout my Don't let school get in the way of your education.
Yeah, exactly. And what was it about working in the ski industry? Because you've worn many, many hats. Like, can you give us just a brief overview of some of the projects you've been involved with? And
what? Yeah, I mean, I started.
What drew you to that?
Well, I mean, that was the one thing I knew I wanted to do coming out of college. Is I knew I wanted to ski.
Yeah.
I couldn't find anybody to pay me to drink beer, so skiing was the only other alternative. So I got a job at K2 right after I got back from shooting Blzzard.
Yeah.
That summer.
And is this up at Vashon Island?
And this is when it was still on Vashon Island.
Yeah.
And so I was there for 3 years, and then I ended up going to Fisher, or excuse me, to Kessler Nordica.
Oh, yeah.
And then came back to K2 and was there for a long time. And there I started. So I came back just as an athlete. I started as a product manager. I came back as an athlete, which was actually a good deal because I made 3/4 of my previous income when I was there every day, and I only owed them 30 days of work. So, and then I had a goggle deal with Oakley and worked, boot deal with Technica.
Okay.
And so I eventually made the same amount of money, but didn't really have to work. So,
what was the culture like? The corporate culture like?
Well, it was different back then. K2, which is pretty lax. It was like khakis and button downs, except for Friday. It was casual Friday. You could wear denim on Friday.
Okay.
And now, of course, you can walk around in shorts and flip flops there. And the ski show was the same way.
Okay.
The ski show, it's the only time most of us wore a suit, but you wore a suit from for 5 days in a row. And the last day of the show, you didn't have to wear a tie, but
oh my gosh.
it was old school. And if you weren't doing business, if you weren't wearing a suit.
Really?
Until the snowboarders came in with baggy pants and hookers in the boots and changed the whole vibe of the show. And then after that, nobody wore suits anymore. So.
All right.
Yeah.
And what? And you were heavily involved with K2's Telemark program. And can you talk a little bit about that? And what was the appeal of Telemark for you?
Well, so when we shot Blzzard of Aahhh, we met John Faulkner and Mark Shapiro and Ace Cavalli, who were all living in Verbier, and they introduced me to telemarking. They were going to do the out route.
Okay.
And they said, "Hey, we're going to do the out route." And I said, "I want to go." And they said, "Okay."
Just to interject, you start in Chamonix, and you ski through Verbier over the Swiss border, and then you continue on to Zermatt, and it links up the two iconic mountains, Mont Blanc and the Matterhorn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, the most iconic. I mean, if you know one ski tour as a ski
That's
tour,
the one.
That's
Yeah.
the iconic one for sure. So, anyways, I said I want to go, and they said, "Well, we're doing it on Tele, so
Okay.
you better go practice."
All
So
right.
I went and groveled around in the snow for a couple of days, and
Stuff the tips, went over the handlebars
Yeah.
and powder. Yeah.
it never stabilized, so we didn't end up going. But that got me interested in it.
Okay.
And it wasn't for a couple years later that K2 bought Modsus, which is a Norwegian
Yep.
Nordic brand.
I used to race on
right?
them when I was
Yeah,
doing ski
okay,
racing. Yeah.
so-
Great skis, yeah.
And of course the Norwegians. So we put alpine molds in at Modsus, so
Yeah.
we could build skis for Europe and avoid some of the shipping. So, and of course the Norwegians started building Telemark skis in those.
Yeah.
And they put them in the
It's a religion.
they put them in the magazine, the big Norwegian magazine test, and won the test.
Yeah.
So they faxed K2. That's how long ago it was. And
Instead of an email, it was a fax. Yeah.
Said, "Hey, we're building the best tele skis in the world. You guys should sell them." And everybody was sitting around K2, and I was in Sun Valley at this point. I wasn't on the island anymore, and so they're sitting around going, and nobody cared about tele
Yeah.
K2
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah. Why would you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so somebody goes, "Hey, Hattrup teles, doesn't he? Let's give it to him." Not like an award. It's like, let's pawn it off and give it to Hattrup. So I said, "Yeah, that sounds like fun." And so that's how it started. And the Norwegians were clever. The first skis were they had the Piste, which was a super narrow, like 63 underfoot.
Yep. Basically a rando race ski.
No, those are 65. And then they had the Piste Off, which was a 65 underfoot.
A real fatty.
Yeah, which was normal alpine width at the time.
Yeah.
And so that's what started it. And then came the Piste Stinks.
Yeah.
And then the cool thing about it was it was tiny. right? So you could take chances. Nobody cared.
Ah.
So then we did the Totally piece, and it was the graphic I chose was it was a graphic that was discarded from the Alpine line that was kind of too radical. It was muscle car flames. And
I remember that distinctly.
That's cool. We're
Yeah.
going to do that. So we kind of, I wasn't a traditional telemarketer. My first boots were leather, but
Yeah.
as soon as plastic came out, I was an Alpine skier. I'm going, plastic's better. So
That's the way
I
to go,
jumped
yeah.
on that. And from that point on, we're not making boots. We're not making skis for leather boots. We're making skis for plastic boots. And so our skis got wider. We did the after the Pea Stinks, and then the Totally, and then the World Piece, and the skis got wider, and we put big stacks under the bindings, which
Yep,
nobody
so you
was
wouldn't
doing.
boot out.
Yeah.
Because that's,
And-
if you're not a tele skier, you don't know what that means, but you would catch the edge of the duckbill and you'd go down like a sniper shot, your legs out from under you.
Exactly.
And it was
Yeah.
brutal.
Well, so that it helped with that, but also the other thing you were lacking was leverage, and that
Yeah.
stack gave you leverage.
Yeah.
And so we had the first shape skis, the first wide skis, the first rockered Tele skis.
Where did the
and-
influences from that come from?
Well, it came from the Alpine world, because I was involved still in the Alpine side of it,
Yeah.
and so I knew that shape skis worked better
Yeah.
than straight skis.
Yeah.
And while all the old Tele guys were stuck in the straight mode, I'm going, this is better. We're doing shape skis.
Yeah.
So
And the rocker tip totally makes sense because with telebindings.
yeah, but that came quite a bit later.
Yeah.
It was the shape skis first, and I knew there was nothing different about the Telmark turn that was going to negate shape skis from working, and same with width. So a lot of this stuff was proved on the Alpine world, and K2 was on the cutting edge of that,
Yeah.
on the front edge, and so I would just adopt it for Telmark right after that. So we went from not being existing in the marketplace to number one in 3 years with a dominant market share. We were like 40-50% market share, and our closest competitor was 20. So it was a fun run.
What was your reaction to that?
Reaction? I mean, it was a super fun time because
Yeah.
we were
I mean, was that what you were expecting? To be that successful?
no, but not long after I realized that these guys are all in yesterday's world.
Okay.
And it just happened that there were all these technological advances happening in the Alpine world that I knew were going to work for Tele.
Right.
So I didn't, unlike now when we test skis, we benchmark all the competitors. At that point, I didn't test anybody else's skis because I knew they were yesterday's papers.
Yep. And then, how did that experience inform what you're doing now at BD? Tell us a little bit about what you're doing at BD, and how did your previous life experience in the ski industry inform how you approach it right now?
Well, so the thing that really shifted my view in product development then was I had started going through the guide courses.
Okay.
So I had become I was an AMGA ski guide.
Yeah.
Shortly after, it was a few years after I started the Tele thing. So I had a lot of knowledge that the average backcountry skier didn't have.
Right.
And so we put a lot of those things into place. Like we put holes in the tips and tails of the skis so
Rescue sleds.
so you could build a
and-
rescue
yeah.
sled. And
Yeah.
we had a really cool, I had a great designer at K2, a guy named Jason Neubauer, who was really clever. And so I'd give him the ideas and he'd figure out how to do it. So we had, and Martin
I like
Folk
doing that too. I've got these great ideas. I'm not sure how to make it happen. You guys figure it out. You're smarter than me.
And that's what my world is at Black Diamond too. Black Diamond is super engineering heavy. We've got 60 engineers there. So so I'm usually the
Quite
dumbest.
the geek squad.
Yeah, and I'm usually the dumbest guy in the room. And so these guys, it's like I understand the market really well.
Okay.
And because I've spent over 30 years in the ski industry, and over 20 years now guiding, and part-time guide, not like you, but so that blend of experience helps a lot. And I work with some brilliant designers that come up with, figure out how to make all these things work. So that's what Black Diamond's kind of it's a special company, and I used to loathe them when I was at K2 because we'd come out with something at K2 that was really cool, that was more progressive than what Black Diamond was doing at the time. Yeah. But Black Diamond had the reputation and the name in that backcountry world. Okay. And so I always thought if I could put that damn BD logo on this, I'd sell 10x of what we do here. Yeah. So now I'm there, which is cool.
Do you feel like you have a knack for seeing things that other people don't, like envisioning products that other people can't see?
Yes and no. I mean, again, a lot of the stuff at K2, I wasn't the visionary that came up with shape skis or fat skis or rocker, but when I see it, I'm usually, actually that's not even true. I was going to say when I see it, I know it, but a lot of the times I didn't. I thought, shape skis, I don't know.
Okay.
And fat skis, I remember I wasn't a big fan of fat skis, and most good skiers weren't. Everybody was saying, all the good skiers like, I don't need fat skis. I
remember getting dinged by my ski examiner on my ski exam in Valdez and being like, "Oh, you guys have your fat skis. It's just a crutch. You need to learn how to ski."
Sounds like Freddie.
Yes, exactly. He was on like some 70 mil Stokely's.
Yeah.
Weighed a ton.
Well, and that was the mindset, and everybody was saying fat skis, fat tourist,
exactly.
But the one skier who was really progressive, who really had amazing progressive vision, was McConkey.
Yeah.
And I remember being down at Powder, and we were talking about fat skis, and Casimiro, the editor at the time, goes, "Yeah, but you don't get face shots. You don't get down in the snow and get face shots." And McConkey's response was, "If you're getting face shots, you're going too slow."
Oh, burn.
Which was true, because you could go 50 miles an hour in Powder and fat skis, and I don't care who you were as a skier, you weren't doing that on old skinny skis.
Yeah. Going back to adventure, you said there was a sense of the unknown. Do you get that also when you're rolling out like new products where like we don't really know how this is going to play out? We think we have an insight into what's lacking in the market and what we think the customer needs, and we've designed it and created it. But is it a little bit stressful when you launch something new?
Yeah, it is, because you never know for sure, and it might be better, but they just might not see it.
Yeah, the perception might.
Yeah, sometimes it took a while for all those things to catch on.
Yeah.
So the product is only part of it. It's the storytelling and the marketing that goes, that tells that story, and sales, and all those things have to line up to have a successful product. So even if the product is spot on, it's not assured success.
Yeah. All right, that might be a good segue. So you're in town in Crested Butte with your partner in crime, Madam President, Angela Hawes, President Emeritus of the AMGA.
Yeah.
And you just ran us through a great training today. I learned a ton about electromagnetic interference.
Yeah.
And could you give us a little insight about the new BD project that you've got going now, and how that fits in, not just flogging product, but also like, hey, this is a public safety issue that most of us are only vaguely aware of, and that you're trying to solve this problem.
Yeah, well, the fact that you as a seasoned guide learned a lot today tells me that most of even the core community is not aware of the electromagnetic interference that exists out there, and how it affects different beacons and what causes that interference. And so this is really it's a PEEPS project and a PEEPS beacon,
and what's Black Diamond's relationship with PEEPS?
Black Diamond and PEEPS are both sister companies.
Okay.
We're both owned by the same parent company. And PEEPS has come out with really breakthrough technology for interference. Because you're familiar with, of course, the 20-50 rule. You need 20 centimeters from your beacon and your phone, or
when I'm sending.
Yeah, when you're sending, and 50 when you're searching.
Yeah.
And
most Americans struggle with what the heck is 50 centimeters.
Well, true. So
what's that, like 20 inches, right? About that?
Yeah, so this is
a shaka.
This is 20 centimeters.
Oh,
and
so you can double it.
And from your wrist to your arm is about 50.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, so that's the easiest way to think about it.
Yeah.
30 centimeters is a foot, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, you lived in Chamonix, you know that.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. I'm a little more adept at switching. Yeah.
But so and we all carry way more pieces of technology that cause interference, from cell phones to GoPros to headlamps to Garmin InReach to a metal probe or a metal shovel or radio. All these things cause a foil covered chocolate bar.
Yeah, that was kind of news to me. I knew chocolate killed in America, but not in this way. Not when I'm backcountry skiing. Yeah.
So it's eye-opening even for the community, the experienced guides and educators, and so that's why Angela and I are on the road to just open people's eyes to this. And it's not our new beacon is called Pro IPS, and it was introduced in Europe this last year.
Yeah.
It'll be introduced in the U.S. next fall.
And it's designed to help solve this problem.
Yeah, you can put your phone right on top of it, and it recognizes that interference and boosts the signal back out to where it should be. So that interference is not an issue anymore with this beacon. And with so many guides unaware of the different things that can cause interference and how much it causes.
Like chocolate bars. Like,
yeah.
My takeaway early on when we were exploring how the interference can totally mess it up was, oh my God. I knew it was bad, but I didn't know it was this bad. And like the chocolate bar was incredibly bad.
Yeah.
Or like the aluminum shovel blade over it. And, phone seems like low-hanging fruit, but that just is going to keep me up at night, because as a mountain guide, I'm trying to control two totally chaotic things. I'm trying to worry about mitigating the avalanche risk, which to some degree is unknowable. We don't have X-ray vision in the snow. It's always a little different from each spot. And then I'm trying to control the people in my group, and both are batshit crazy. And now I don't know what people have in their pockets. And when we do our beacon check, I'm like, hey, touch your electronics and touch your beacon so I can see the separation. But then once we start our tour, it's always changing.
Yeah.
And I don't have control over that.
Right.
And this is terrifying, because what we saw was the range just gets crushed, whether you're sending and you've got interference or whether you're searching and you get interference. And as a mountain guide, I can't control that. Once we leave the trailhead, I don't know what people are doing with their electronics or their chocolate bar wrapper or their big belt buckle or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I hate that feeling of being
helpless. It's scary, and that's why I think this beacon is it's fully featured like a guide beacon, but it's also the safest beacon, because if I've got a client that has that, I don't care where their phone is. I don't care where they put their foil covered chocolate bar or their GoPro, or it doesn't matter. And that's comforting as a guide.
Yeah.
To know that that's not going to be an issue. I don't have to, I know, like you said, when you start the tour, you know where that stuff is, but
and then all bets are off.
As soon as you turn around and start walking and they take a picture and then it goes right on top of their beacon, you don't know that.
Even as a professional, I got to say, like when I was working at our local CAT operation at Irwin Guides, we would have so much gear. So you got your radio, you got your phone to document for photos and notes.
And navigation.
And then you've got your pull wire and all this stuff. And then your beacon, and then maybe a GPS watch. And
one of the worst offenders.
Yeah, you'd come back in after your route to log your shots and load it up on the computer for documentation. And invariably, someone would come in and say, "Oh my God, I had so much going on. I had my beacon down in my thigh pocket to keep it away from my electronics, but I unzipped the pocket that was supposed to be dedicated only for the beacon." And these are all senior guides. These are not rookies. And it would happen all the time because the cognitive load, I've just got so much on my mind, I absentmindedly unzipped the wrong pocket and I left it open. And I was skiing out there naked, basically, with the chance my beacon falls out, and I've got a keeper leash, but I do not want to trust that little plastic clip with my life if I get swept in an avalanche.
Right.
Yeah, and it really drove it home to me of like, this is a really difficult problem to solve for the professionals. So how the hell does a normal person who ski tours once or twice a month going to deal with this?
Absolutely. No, that's why this is one of those big breakthroughs in technology that will change the game and ultimately make it a lot safer.
Mm. Yeah. And my experience with the beacon was I usually use a Mammut. That's what I've used for a long time. And the things I appreciate about that seem to be the same with the Peeps in that it's an incredibly precise and accurate arrow. Mm-hmm. So if the arrow is aiming at the victim, that window is only a few degrees, whereas some brands, it's really wide. It's like a 30-degree window. Are there any specs on that they were aiming for, the engineers?
Well, it went from 15 to 7. So when you get down to that fine search, and that's when, I mean, you're just following the arrow and the flux line to start with, right? But when you get down inside 10 meters, that's when that arrow is really critical, and the more accurate that arrow is in the fine search, the less time you spend on the grid search.
Yep. Yeah. And what I find when I'm teaching avalanche courses, or even for clients or beginners, that fine search where you do the grid takes up far and away the most amount of time. And we can eliminate that altogether. We're just like lining it up at 10 meters and you're pointing right at the victim. And then when you get down to 4, again, it's right at the victim and your partner can start probing. And they're going to find it before I finish my lowest reading doing the fine search with the bracketing. And then it seemed like when I got in with the Peeps, at the very end, what happens to the arrows when you're within, like, is it 2 meters?
The arrows go away.
And why is that? Why is that important?
Well, because at that point you should be in the grid search.
Yeah. Because it drives me nuts when beacons still have an arrow that close, because they're overwhelmed by the infinite number of flux lines and that arrow is no longer accurate. And I love that the Peeps just prompts you to do your grid there, instead of giving you an arrow that's not accurate at all. And then you have to block that out. It's just like one more thing that I don't have to think about, so I can focus on my job. Yeah, I really like that. And the long range too.
Yeah. Well, the as you know, the antenna flips out, and so by moving the antenna out away from the rest of the software, because the software also causes interference.
Okay.
So if you can move that antenna away from the interference, that's one of the reasons we have longer range.
Okay, because I was like, wow, I've never seen a beacon where you flip out the antenna.
Yeah.
I feel like it's Saturday morning cartoons in Vermont and my brother's holding the rabbit ear antennas so we can watch, and then it's going to be my turn. Okay, but that kind of makes sense. You get better reception.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Huh. And then what's the availability for this beacon?
Right now it's just we've got some out to guides and professionals like yourself, and it will be available next fall.
Okay.
Yeah, or you can go to Europe and get one.
Great. All right. Now, we've got a big day of touring tomorrow, and none of us are as fit as we used to be, so we're going to get an early start. So we're going to wrap this up. We've got 2 more questions. What haven't I asked you?
You didn't ask me about the iProbe.
Oh, yeah.
The iProbe is very cool, and the iProbe is something that's been around for a few
kind of
years. Completely overlooked by me, and I'm the ski category manager, right? So it's like if the ski category director is missing this, then yeah, of course everybody
Which
else
kind of
is.
ties back into what you said before. Like, it could be a fantastic world-beating idea, but if the messaging isn't there,
Yeah.
it doesn't resonate with people, and
Yeah.
I don't get it.
So the eye probe actually has a sensor in the tip of the probe, as you know, and when it gets close to the beacon, it sounds like the backup camera on your car. It goes
Yeah.
beep, beep, and then beep. So the cool thing about this is, as you know, having taught lots of avalanche courses, two of the biggest struggles for people learning this is, one, to do an accurate grid search.
Yep.
It's not that easy.
It falls apart.
Yeah.
It falls apart.
And second, when they're probing, how do I know when I've got a body? You know, is that a rock, or is it a
mud?
helmet?
Is it
or
a
boot?
log?
Or
Yeah. What the heck is it? Yeah.
And so this takes both of those, eliminates the need for both of those, because as you're doing, as you said, as you get inside 5 meters and you're slowing down and you've dialed in that line and you're going straight ahead, somebody can be probing and hearing how
Yep.
close they are, and before you even get to the lowest point on your beacon, they've already got a strike.
Yeah.
And there's no questioning, is this a body or
I
not?
can't imagine a worse feeling of digging down 1.5 meters and moving 1 to 2 tons and being like, shit, we didn't have them.
Right.
That was a log.
And that
Or
happened.
that was mud. It felt squishy, but it's not a person.
Yep.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. And you don't know what a body, I mean, I don't know what a body feels like with the probe. I've never probed a body.
Squishy,
So yeah.
bouncy. Unless you get their boot
Hopefully
or helmet.
not. I mean,
Okay. All right. And then wrap-up question. Got any questions for me?
AspectAvy. I mean,
Yeah.
this is a really cool thing. I think, again, when you talk about safety and trying to, any way you slice it, ski touring can be risky, but you can make it as risky as you want. You can go out in high hazard and ski dangerous lines, or you can go out in high hazard and ski mellow lines.
Yeah.
Right? So tell me about AspectAvy and how that's going to help.
Well, I was putting myself in your shoes and Angela's shoes, because we all know guides, mountain professionals, are the highest risk group. And we've lost so many friends and colleagues, and we don't want to be in that group. And we also know that about the sketchiest thing you can do is guides out on their day off skiing together, because the human factor traps are through the roof. Usually someone's a local, so familiarity trap. And you got
That's
the
you.
expert halo of like, oh, we're all super dialed, super accomplished. And then there's this weird thing that happens where we always have to be in control and at work. And when we're not at work, we don't want to be. And it's like, hey, this is my day off. I am not going to herd these cats. And they're all fiercely independent. And there's going to be this weird social pushback if I'm the negative Ned and it's like, I don't know, guys, this feels a little aggressive. I'm going to get ridiculed by my peers. And it's a weird dynamic. And oftentimes, the sketchiest things that I've ever been involved with in the closest calls are formerly on guides courses and exams, and guides on their day out. And that's just how it is. And I was thinking about, for you guys, we were just coming off a high danger. And before that, we were pegged at considerable for like 11 days. There's more persistent weak layers than I can count. And you guys have never skied here.
Right.
And you're like, what am I walking into?
We're going to go meadow skipping.
Well, what was your experience like tonight when we got out the laptop and we went to app.aspectavy.com and you had the run list for Crested Butte on there?
It takes a lot of that human factor out of the equation.
Yeah.
Because we looked at it and Ange's like, I want to ski north facing.
Yeah.
So we go, okay, what are north facing options?
Because it's been warm.
And the cool thing with the app too is you can choose a lot of some of the apps, Gaia and CalTopo have slope angle shading, so you can see, it's green or yellow to orange to red to purple,
like 10 different colors.
right?
Yeah.
and I'm
like
going
a tie-dye T-shirt at a Dead
yeah,
concert.
and it's like I just want to know right now if it's considerable. I want to stay below 30.
Yeah.
So I don't care what shade it is above 30.
Yeah.
I just want to know everything that's under 30.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought was really cool about the app is like everything that's above 30 is red.
And what I felt was really cool was we're on equal footing, because even though I'm the local and been here for, I don't know, 20-something years, like we all have the same information and we can discuss it, and it's a level playing field, and there gets rid of the hierarchy, which if you're going to have a well-functioning team in a high-risk environment, there can be no hierarchy. Like everyone's opinion and data needs to be incorporated in the team decision. And it took us like 3 minutes to be like, that's where we're going. And
Yeah.
Angela just zoomed in and was like, I want to ski north facing for the best snow quality. And like you said, like, I mean, you started the extreme skiing movement in America, one could arguably say. You have at least some shared responsibility for that. And you're like, I don't want to ski over 30 degrees today. I want to be skiing blue run terrain and come home safely. And we're like, yes, we all agree on that. And let's look for the ones that are in the clear.
Yeah.
And that was that.
My goal with every tour is to ski the next day.
My motto used to be, look good, ski fast, safety last. But then I got the beat down so many times. I was like, oh yeah, let's have a long and adventurous life.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks so much. Appreciate
Yeah.
you coming on.
Thanks for having me. Looking
All
forward to the tour.
Yeah, tomorrow's going to be great.
You're breaking trail. You're the local.
I think we're bringing in the ringer. We're bringing in Alex. She's super fit.
Perfect.
All right, thanks.
Thank you so much for listening to All Aspects. If you like what we're doing here, please leave a rating and review. It really is the best way to help others find the show. Thanks again to our business daddy, AspectAvy, for making this show possible. To learn more about how AspectAvy is making avalanche safety simple, go to aspectavy.com. If you want to use this powerful new tool on your next backcountry adventure, simply download the app from the App Store and enjoy 30 days free on them. Lastly, a special thanks to IceLab for helping us produce this show. You guys rock, and we couldn't do it without you. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the backcountry.